Translator call letters for Idaho's News Channel 7. From Idaho's News Channel 7, this is Viewpoint.
And welcome to Viewpoint. I'm Joe Paris. Idaho lawmakers are back home all across the state of Idaho. The legislative session wrapped up this past week. After 94 legislative days, lawmakers called it a year. Sine die or sine die, whatever way you'd like to say it. I guess we can talk about that another time. But this week on Viewpoint, we welcome Idaho Democrats and Republicans to reflect on the session that was. And we begin our conversation this morning with Idaho GOP. The Senate Pro Tem, Senator Chuck Winder, out of Meridian. Senator, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
The dust has settled. I guess at what point do you kind of start looking back and taking inventory of what happened?
Well, obviously you have to take inventory because there's a lot of these types of events that occur afterwards. But I think, it always takes us a week or two to just kind of wind down and get back into our normal routines of work and life. And so I think, overall it was a great session. We accomplished a lot of really good things.
What to you sticks out as some of the more important accomplishments? Is there one that you hang your hat on?
Not really one, but I think, you look at it and you say, okay, we got the launch program going, which will help somewhere between 10 and 12,000 Idaho students, take that initial step into education, trying to get certifications and high demand job educations. The school facilities, we've worked for years trying to figure out a way to advance that in our state. I think it will help all of our schools with maintenance and some with some major improvements, but overall it'll also reduce property tax because the state's going to take on more of that obligation. The other thing that I think really important is the transportation funding for locals and for the state. So a lot of really good programs put together this year.
Going back to House Bill 521, that super encompassing piece of legislation towards the end of the session, we heard some concerns and maybe some complaints about if it's legal, if it's one subject. Do you have any concerns about an injured party or somebody raising a flag on this one?
It's really difficult for anyone to raise the issue because the courts have been very lenient with the legislature over the years to say they really have the right to say what is single subject. Now, the way they did it this time was they said this is all about taxation and revenue. And yeah, it was. I think our preference on the Senate side would be to see less, we call them Christmas tree bills, less of that in the future so you can actually go in and deal with each item. But sometimes they put different things into different bills so that different groups of legislators will vote for things.
A big topic at the legislature early on this year was the Joint Finance and Appropriations Committees. Right. We had learned from the co-chairs they were going to do things a different way. What's your assessment on how JFAC processes went? Obviously, there were some bumps in the road this year.
Right. I think it was an interesting process. I think everybody liked the idea of having less presentation time in this 3 hours because they spend 3 hours in the committee a day. So they divided up half and half. So 45 minutes of presentations, 45 minutes of working groups actually delving into those budgets. The one thing they did differently was, and it was kind of interesting, they basically passed about, I think it was $12.1 billion in what they called maintenance budgets. Yeah. They were based on last year's budgets and put in a little bit for employee compensation, but I think the overall impact of it was significant in that it allowed those that don't like state government, they want to reduce the size of it, it allowed them to go in and have many opportunities with trailer bills to add those line items to those budgets to be able to vote no on them. And so I think that part of it probably didn't work out as well as we hoped it would, but I think overall people understood the budgets a whole lot better, and I think overall it was a decent process. Now it'll be up to the next legislature as to whether they continue that process or whether they revert back to the tried and true system that they'd had for many years.
In terms of things that were not accomplished, is there anything that sticks out to you in terms of we should have gotten this done, we thought maybe we'd get this done, and here we are, it didn't get done?
Yeah, I think one of the last day things that came up in the last couple of days was related to payers and payments that were made to caregivers, and that might be for skilled nursing, it might be for just regular nursing homes and that type of thing. Thought it was passed, thought they had a good bill in 398, and then the governor's office raised some questions about that. we felt like that the governor and the executive branch had the right and discretion to make those payments. They're not so sure they have the right to make those payments, and based on 398. So that that was an ongoing discussion when we left, and kind of a disappointment we couldn't get both sides of the issue to the table and agree on a compromise, because we could have accomplished it fairly quickly. But it's a very complicated issue, and people just couldn't come to that agreement.
Do you think this is something that needs to be studied in the interim and will come up again in January?
There are rumors out there that the governor might even call us back, at some point. Hopefully they don't, but because I think they have the discretion to make those payments with the federal dollars.
It was interesting too, because there was a lot of conversations the last 2 weeks of the legislature, and like you, I'd started to hear things yesterday or this past week about, well, maybe the governor needs to get this taken care of. I guess we'll see and find out.
Yeah, we'll see.
In terms of last-minute conversations, though, you mentioned the transportation budget earlier.
Right.
The language, of course, in the ITD budget that kills the sale of the State Street campus in Boise.
Right.
What's your assessment on how that played out? I know that it came down to the very last vote in the Senate.
Right. And I was very disappointed in what happened. 2 years ago, the same committee, JFAC, provided $37 million to ITD and told them to relocate to the Shinning campus. They were in that process. They had declared the land surplus. They, in good faith, negotiated with potential buyers for it, came to an agreement, awarded the contract back in September. Then it kind of went into a limbo state where they're trying to finalize the actual contract agreement. The final red line agreement was sent on March 15th. The buyer signed it on the 18th of March, and yet the legislature intervened in it. The same committee now changed their mind and said, no, you're going to spend $32 million and go back into the old building on State Street, which effectively kills the deal. They said, the people that opposed it said, well, it wasn't a good enough deal. The appraised value on the property, as is basically, was $38 million. They got $52 million for the property. So there, from my perspective, I fought it as hard as I could fight it. We killed it several different times because I didn't like the language. I thought it was basically overturning a 2-year process that they told them to do, and they did. And now they changed their mind as a legislature, and we're trying to come back and kill the deal.
What type of harm or what type of impact on Idaho's reputation do you think this deal has? Because I've heard from private contractors that say, no way I would get into business with Idaho if they're going to pull this out.
Right. And I think, this was a really unusual type of thing, It was a long-term process that was underway, and I was really disappointed that, the legislature decided to go that way. But that's the will of the body, and obviously the House was locked down on it. They weren't going to change in JFAC, and I think some of our members tried to get the language removed, couldn't get that done successfully, and as a result, we ended up with it. Even, when it went to the governor said this is unfair, and it probably hurts our state reputation, but just didn't sign it and went into law. So I think it'll end up in some significant lawsuits with contractors as well as the potential developers of the property.
And I know also in the last week of the Senate, there was a real kind of mix-up in terms of the same piece of legislation, minus $100, coming out of JFAC back to the Senate. And then there was questions. We saw the whole thing on the floor with the lieutenant governor and the parliamentarian saying, we can't keep doing this. We can't pass the same bill that we've already had.
Right.
What were your opinion on how that played out? Because it seemed very unique to us.
Well, I was kind of leading that charge, trying to figure out a way to push back on what they were doing. I loved the budget numbers because it was for transportation. I just didn't like the intent language where they were totally reversing a 2-year process that they had required 2 years prior. So, I looked for different parliamentary ways to deal with it. It caused quite a ruckus and uproar the last day, and we went ahead. I think it possibly could have been killed again, but some people, one person changed their mind, and as a result, it turned out instead of being, opposed, it was in favor by 18 votes.
Time flies by, as you know, on the show. So final question for you before we do have to go for the break. I know coming into the year, I spoke to a lot of Republicans at the Statehouse and people of Idaho. They said school choice vouchers or some type of program with vouchers or some types of credits. That's what they wanted, and it didn't get done this session. Your opinion, what do you think this I guess, conversation looks like into the future.
Well, I think it'll be an ongoing conversation, but one of the things I always remind people is the Idaho Constitution requires the legislature to provide a free and thorough education for all kids going through grade school and high school. So that's our first obligation. We've been fortunate we've had enough revenue to kind of do some pilot programs on how do we, empowering parents was a good example during COVID. Trying to help them direct more money towards the student and a little bit more parental choice. This issue isn't going to go away. It'll be back next time. They tried to do it as a tax credit, but they couldn't get it out of the House Tax Committee. So it'll be back again. You'll see some efforts to expand this Empowering Parents program, I think.
Well, Senator Pro Tem Chuck Winder, thank you so much for being with us here
Thanks,
on
Joe.
Viewpoint, and thank you for all the work you do for the state of Idaho.
My privilege.
We have to take a real quick break, but when we come back, Idaho Democrats from the Senate and the House will be joining us for their reaction to the 2024 session. We'll be right back on Viewpoint.
My Lowe's Rewards credit card saves us 5% on the things we need. 5% off, 5% off, 5% off.
And as loyalty members, we get points toward Milo's money for the things we want.
Oh, we want this.
The all-new Milo's Rewards loyalty program is here. Download the app to join, earn, and save today.
It's quality on sale every day at Easy Chair Plus and Mattress on West Eustic Road. You'll find the largest selection of lift chairs in many sizes with many features. Ready for a new mattress? Budget-friendly, perfect fit pillows and mattresses for the whole family are at Easy Chair Plus. Premium luxury mattresses are a bargain hunter's dream. Enjoy pain-free, healthier, happy living with a new massage chair from Easy Chair Plus. Sit right in a new recliner. Always check Easy Chair Plus and Mattress on Eustic Road.
This is Stephanie's favorite view, where Stephanie becomes Stephanie. This makes Stephanie think ironing is fun. Sometimes. We know Stephanie, so we added this for outfits for gardening, dancing, and closing the deal. That's a smart outfit. This is a smart drawer. Like Stephanie, there's always room for surprises. This is Stephanie's Closet, a space designed by California Closets, a company built on listening to Stephanie and you. Schedule your free design consultation now.
Cruise into summer in a brand new Subaru. It's the 2024 St. Vincent de Paul Subaru Car Raffle. 3 Subarus, 3 chances to win. Tickets are $100 each. Only 2,100 tickets available. Funds raised help prevent homelessness in our community. Winners will be drawn June 21st, 2024. Scan the QR code to get your ticket and to learn more. The St. Vincent de Paul Subaru Car Raffle. Together, we prevent homelessness in Southwest Idaho.
Idaho is known for its unpredictable weather.
That's why KTVB's First Alert Weather Team is always ready to keep you in the know.
When you need accuracy.
When you need reliability.
When you need consistency.
Trust the First Alert Weather Team.
Trust KTVB, Idaho's News Channel 7.
Hey, welcome back to Viewpoint. We continue our conversation wrapping up the 2024 Idaho legislative session. Welcoming our guests now for our second segment, Idaho Democrats, the leaders from the Senate and the House, Alana Rubel and Melissa Wintrow. Thank you so much for being here with us. I'll start with you. We'll go back to the Senate as we just had with Senator Winder. What sticks out to you in terms of the Senate? Is there anything you hang your hat on this year?
Well, it was a tumultuous session, but there were some really good things that happened, some other things that overshadowed, but I'd like to point out that the launch program got funded. We had that policy last year, and we actually got that across the finish line, and really the help of Democrats doing that once again, and those tens of thousands of, the students in our state are going to be so grateful for that, and it's going to really help our in-demand workforce and help businesses as well. And I would like to say, too, some of the Democrats, we got a lot of good bills across the finish line. One that I worked on for 6 years, to expand access to contraception.
Yes.
One to help neurocognitive. Representative Rubel got the fentanyl test strips to really work on the fentanyl crisis and harm reduction. Really good things.
And we know that, typically the Democrats are playing defense, as my colleague Andrew Bartline said on the 208 the other day. When you're on the House floor, does it feel like defense, or do you feel like you're able to we're going to push for our things.
It's a mixture, but I mean, we really do get a lot through. We are not just on defense, although we do, I think, critical work on defense. I think it's of equal value when you get good things through and when you stop bad things from happening. You are equally doing a good service to the people of Idaho. But we really try to focus on meaningful bread and butter issues that will help real people, and we try to stay. We don't affirmatively bring the wild social issues and getting into those weeds, but we addressed, how to deal with folks who are facing dementia, neurocognitive disorders, integrity in elections by addressing deep fakes, bettering access to in-home daycare. We really tried to focus on those concrete issues that will really help people. But we did spend a lot of time on defense, sometimes successfully and sometimes not. A number of things made it through that we really wish we would have had the numbers to stop, that I think are going to do real harm, some of which will likely end up in court and cost taxpayers a lot of money.
It's actually the first conversation I had after we saw that it was officially sine die. I had a phone call, and the person on the other line said, well, how much money is the ACLU going to make this week? And, alluding to the fact that there will likely be some lawsuits over legislation that is now law. In your opinion, what sticks out as one or two things that you think, okay, well, this is going to cost us taxpayers in court?
Yeah, a number of them. I mean, some of them, frankly, are on lawsuits we have pretty much already lost, and they're just going to take another run at it and see if we can lose it again. But some of them, particularly in this bizarre transgender obsession that our friends across the aisle seem to have, they have brought, just in the 67th legislative cycle, they brought 30 anti-LGBTQ bills. Not all of them became law, but a lot of them were signed into law, and a lot of them are already tied up in court, and new ones this session are probably going to go into court, including the one defining gender as males are people who produce sperm and females are people who produce eggs, and that is all there is in law. We've already lost the lawsuit on whether you can, tell the state they can't issue driver's licenses and birth certificates in people's preferred gender once they've undergone the full transition. We've already lost that suit. Apparently, we're going to have to litigate it again. There are a number along those lines. I think, we'll see if the library bill ends up in court. I think there's some voter suppression measures that will likely end up in court, including an attack on ballot initiatives again, which were already found by the Supreme Court to be a fundamental right that you can't infringe. So it's unfortunate, and we tried to stop those before they went through, but again, we just don't have the numbers to stop them, but maybe that'll change someday.
And we heard from our colleagues in the LGBTQ community about their concerns with the legislative session, and I guess just a week or so ago, there was a big event where they put like 40,000 hearts all over the Capitol. I saw you watching, Senator Wintrow. When you watch an event like that, and you can kind of see this physical representation of all these Idahoans, what are your thoughts in terms of the legislations being passed and the path forward?
It was inspiring and heartbreaking all at the same time to watch that, because they had 48,000 hearts that people had shared from all over the state to represent, according to our last census, the 48,000 people in our LGBTQ community. These are human beings. These are our neighbors, our family members, our teachers, our police officers, everyone. And all this legislation that is attacking just basic human freedoms and the right to just be who you want to be and go about your life. I would rather see us, instead of focusing on taking people's rights away, I would like to see the government actually be more helpful than hindering. We saw that on the Senate floor when they eradicated the summer food program for low-income kids. Yeah. Our priorities are misguided and misplaced, I think, many times, and we should be focusing on the real issues that help real Idahoans, just get to work, go to school, and raise their families, instead of, these issues that really are not the bread and butter issues. I have never at a door heard somebody said, could you please define the word sex for me? No, they want their roads paved, their bridges working, their schools funded, and daycare paid for so they can get to work. That's what we need to be focusing on.
And Representative Rubel touched on the library bill that many people have talked about over the last few days. Came down to the wire. People were wondering if the governor was going to sign it. He vetoed a similar bill last year. This year, he signed it into law. Lawsuits probably. What are your thoughts on the impact in communities?
Yeah, here we are again, the third year in a row, I think, fighting this battle. Again, a battle that has been ginned up over the course of our country, where we see in other red states. These are bills coming from manufacturing, bill mills, as my colleague has said before. And there is no pornography in libraries. There just isn't. And these bills are really a myth and a specter that are creating, harm in our libraries and the First Amendment, and they're just not necessary. I wish the governor would have vetoed that bill along with many others, but I just think this is going to wind up in court. It's harmful. Every single person that testified except one was opposed to that bill, and there was a lot of people. So I think the legislature need to start listening to the people and listening to those committee hearings when people testify.
Well, it's interesting you highlight that too, because in the House when there was testimony on this, again, we only had, one of the testimonies I watched, there wasn't a single person in favor, and we were only hearing from people that had concerns about it.
Yeah.
What type of confidence in the process do you think that has? Because we hear from people that say, I go to the legislature, I give my opinion, they never listen.
It's very frustrating, and I hope that people don't get too discouraged, because sometimes they do listen, and it's not total. You should still come in and testify and still write in, because every once in a while it does work. But I am really getting concerned at a bigger picture, just beyond this bill, and this is something that reaches many topic areas, of how much of our politics is being driven by some smoke-filled room in across the country where there is a bill mill cranking up something that they are shopping to every red state, and it is in no way driven by any need in Idaho or any desire of a person in Idaho. In fact, often it really undercuts the needs of people in Idaho. But somebody somewhere in a right-wing think tank is saying, you better pass a bill going after libraries. You better pass a bill going after transgender people. You better pass a bill shutting down this form of voting or trying to limit absentee voting. None of this is ever coming from a real problem in Idaho that needs to be addressed. And increasingly, our legislation is being driven by outside interests that often pour an awful lot of money into the state of Idaho to ram through their ideological agenda. I think it's really unhealthy, and I think we would do much better work if we focused on the actual needs being brought to us by the people in our own state.
I can't remember who said it, but I heard one lawmaker say on the House floor this year, these are pieces of legislation that are searching for problems. We want to fix problems that don't exist right now. Is that responsible lawmaking? I have a feeling I know what your answer is.
And here's what as a legislator, here's what I do. 2 summers ago, I got a call from the homeless shelter and said, we have somebody here with a neurocognitive disorder, and we don't know what to do. They're a danger to themselves. I don't know what to do. We cobbled together an intervention. We solved the problem, and I thought it shouldn't be that hard. And I found out there was a gap in the law at that time. So people with dementia who hit an acute crisis may be a danger. There's nothing you can do but take them to jail or leave them there. So that's how you solve a problem, I think. You bring stakeholders together. You say, what is going on? How do we solve this to make it better for people? Not going to outside of the state to say, let's conjure up something, for politics. Let's solve the problems that come to us.
And meanwhile, we have some very, very big problems that are totally unaddressed while we kind of gin up problems. I mean, most notably women's health care. Huge whiffed ball on that one. That is possibly the biggest issue facing our state right now, with doctors fleeing the state, women having to be airlifted out of state with dire medical problems, and not even an attempt to fix it. Well, the Democrats made attempts, but they would not allow a hearing or a vote on any bill to give any kind of health exception for women facing medical crises that require an abortion.
And really in the interim, when we heard from Idaho medical experts, that's what they were asking for, is just clarity in the law.
Well, we saw a group of physicians that came to the Capitol the last week of the session in the Lincoln Auditorium, presenting to anyone who would listen the dire straits that this medical system is in. And the legislature, I think, has dug a hole in the whole medical system we have in our state that we're not going to get out of anytime soon. So I think they, and there's not a week that goes by you don't see an article in the paper about a woman in a crisis pregnancy needing help or physicians leaving the state. There is no excuse. We all know that's a problem, but we continue to put our head in the sand. And I was really disappointed this year that we did not, for a state that says they value life, did not value the life of the mother and did not address this problem.
We're short for time, but I did have to ask, add the words. I know that when there was legislation about pronouns and how people are defined by law, there was some concerns about who's a protected class. And the add the words again for, I don't know, what year is it now that it hasn't gone through?
Yeah. Well, we've tried for so many years to try to get just protection from discrimination on the grounds of being LGBTQ. I mean, frankly, at this point, we would just be happy if the affirmative attacks would stop. We would love to be able to actually give protection. But right now, every single year, multiple attacks and multiple laws are brought stripping away the rights of people in the LGBTQ community and just making these full frontal attacks on them. Those attacks need to stop. We've seen that calls to suicide hotlines from LGBTQ youth double during the legislative session. They see what their leaders are doing to them. They feel that hate, and it really is triggering trauma in that community. It's got to stop.
Yeah.
And I know the conversations I've had with some people in that community, and as we talk about, growing Idaho and getting people into their workforce and having families stay here in Idaho, when I talk to young people, unfortunately they say, I don't know if this is my home anymore.
Right. I hear from a lot of people that say, I can't stay here any longer. Emails, phone calls, it's too hostile, it's not safe. And that's really heartbreaking and disappointing. Every person deserves the right to thrive and the opportunity to be successful. And again, the government should not be hindering our way. It should be at least helping or just get out of the way, in my estimation. So, but here's what I would say is hopeful. I meet with a lot of high school students, and there was a group of high school students in a committee room on one of these gender-affirming care bills. And I walked out with them and I said, what do you think about this? And that group of students said, this doesn't represent us at all. This is not who we are. So I have hope in this generation, and we know that we're going to have a future where people feel included, welcomed, and can be who they want to be.
Well, that's actually all the time we have. We went right up to the end there, but Senator Melissa Wintrow, Representative Alana Rubel, thank you for your time here on Viewpoint, and thank you for your work you do for the state of Idaho. We'll be right back after this.
Make your first move with battery power made by Steel. Right now, save $50 on select Steel battery trimmers. Real Steel. Find yours.
Bowman Funeral was started as a vision by a family to help families. Throughout the years, that vision has stayed the same. We offer high-quality services and arrangements in a family atmosphere, from a family to your family.
We've been here since 2004 with a goal in mind to offer families informed financial decisions and help them make an informed financial decision.
We invite you to stop by, call us, or visit us online.
We are Bowman Funeral.
Save thousands on the new revolutionary swim spa at a one-time sale. Final day. Ford Idaho Center Nampa. Exercise with low impact. Swim the entire year and stay in shape. Teach your kids to swim. Unwind and save thousands. Avoid the expense and maintenance involved with a pool. Swim, exercise, and relax in your new aquatic exercise swim spa. Installation and one day only. New 2024 inventory. 18-month interest-free financing. Millions of dollars of inventory must be sold. Ford Idaho Center Nampa. Free admission. Free parking. Call 833-SPA-SALE.
Thanks for joining us on Viewpoint this week, and as always, thanks to our guests. We'll see you next week right here on News Channel 7.